माधवा कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजना यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजना यमुना तीरा वन चाहे यमुना तीरा वन चाहे जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी 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 जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतक श्री श्रीमद अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतक श्री श्रीमद श्रील भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय। श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupada Hare Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namane. Namo Vishnupada Hare Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 9, Verse 20. Yaha avidyaya anupahataha api dasha ardha vrittya nidram uvaha jhatari krita lokayatraha antah jale ahikhashipu sparsha anukulam bhima urmi malini janasya sukham vivrinvan. Yo vidyayānupahatopi dasārdhavritya Yo vidyayānupahatopi dasārdhavritya Nidramuvaha jhatari kritalokayātraha Nidramuvaha jhatari kritalokayātraha Antarjalehi kashipu sparshanukulam Antarjalehi kashipu sparshanukulam Bhimormi malini janasya sukham vivrinvan Bhimormi malini janasya sukham vivrinvan Yo vidyayānupahatopi dasārdhavritya Nidramuvaha jhatari kritalokayātraha Antarjalehi kashipu sparshanukulam Bhimormi malini janasya sukham vivrinvan Yo vidyayānupahato dasārdhavritya Nidramuvaha jhatari kritalokayātraha Antarjalehi kashipu sparshanukulam Bhimormi malini janasya sukham vivrinvan Yo vidyayānupahatopi dasārdhavritya Nidramuvaha jhatari kritalokayātraha Antarjalehi kashipu sparshanukulam Bhimormi malini janasya sukham vivrinvan Yo vidyayānupahatopi dasārdhavritya Nidramuvaha jhatari kritalokayātraha Antarjalehi kashipu sparshanukulam Bhimormi malini janasya sukham vivrinvan Yo vidyayanupahato bidasardhavritya Nidramuvaha jatari kritalokayatra Antarjalehi kashipu sparshanukulam Bhimormi malini janasya sukham vivrinvan. Matajis. Nidram uvaha jatari kritalokayatra Sparshanukulam Sukam vivrinvan. Nupahato pijashardhavritya Nidramuvaha jatari kritalokayatra Jalehi kashipu sparshanukulam Bhimormi malini janasya sukham vivrinvan. Okay. Yaha 1. Avidyaya, influenced by nescience. Anupahataha, without being affected. Api, in spite of. Dasha ardha, 5. Vritya, interaction. Nidram, sleep. Uvaha, accepted. Jhathari, within the abdomen. Krita, doing so. Lokayatraha, maintenance of the different entities. Antaha jale, within the water of devastation. Ahikashipu, on the snake bed. Sparsha anukulam, happy for the touch. Bhima urmi, violent waves. Malini, chain of. Janasya, of the intelligent person. Sukham, happiness. Vivrinvan, showing. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. My dear Lord, you accept the pleasure of sleeping in the water of devastation, where there are violent waves, and you enjoy pleasure on the bed of snakes, showing the happiness of your sleep to intelligent persons. At that time, all the universal planets are stationed within your abdomen. Purport. Persons who cannot think of anything beyond the limit of their own power are like frogs in a well who cannot imagine the length and breadth of the great Pacific Ocean. Such people take it as legendary when they hear that the Supreme Lord is lying on His bed within the great within the great ocean of the universe. They are surprised that one can lie down within water and sleep very happily. But a little intelligence can mitigate this foolish astonishment. There are many living entities within the bed of the ocean who also enjoy the material bodily activities of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. If such insignificant living entities can enjoy life within the water, why can't the Supreme Lord, who is all-powerful, sleep on the cool body of a serpent and enjoy in the turmoil of violent ocean waves? The distinction of the Lord is that all His activities are transcendental, and He is able to do anything and everything without being deterred by limitations of time and space. He can enjoy His transcendental happiness regardless of material considerations. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Supadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Udav Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaye Te Namo Namaha Yo Vidyayanupahato Dasardha Vritya Nidramuvaha Jatari Kritaloka Yatraha Antarjalehi Kashipu Sparshana Kulam Bhimor Mimalini Janasya Sukham Vivrinvan. My Lord, you accept the pleasure of sleeping in the water of devastation where there are violent waves, and you enjoy the pleasure on the bed of snakes, showing the happiness of your sleep to intelligent persons. At that time, all the universal planets are stationed within your abdomen. So here, Brahma is continuing his prayers before creating the material universe, and he's praying to Lord Vishnu. So before I begin speaking, also I'd like to welcome Mukunda Charan Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Pleasant surprise. I didn't know you were coming. So here, Srila Prabhupada, in his classic way, is attacking specifically here the scientists, people who are less intelligent and who don't believe in these kind of statements of the Supreme Lord. It looks fantastic. There's because we cannot relate to it. The pleasure on the bed of snakes. I was just lying on the bed of snakes. There's pleasure on lying on the bed of snakes. And also because, and actually from Prabhupada's purport, we understand that the body of a snake is cool. How are you supposed to know that? And, maybe sometimes they have these people who, I don't know what you call them, but they have these snake pets, and then they can wrap it around your neck or something like this and play with it. Anyone's had experience of that? No, I don't know how it is. I'm too freaked out to try that out. And but I was curious to know if it felt cool, because Prabhupada is saying cool body of a snake, or maybe there's different kinds of snakes. Some bodies of snakes are cool. So, anyways, the point here is that and violent waves. So you look at this picture: water of devastation, violent waves, which means there's a lot of wind. Violent waves getting kicked up. If you've ever, I lived in a beach city, Chennai. I grew up there. So when there's storms, or cyclones, or hurricanes, and you happen to have the misfortune of being outside, and especially near the ocean shore, you can see all the waves getting thrown up, and it's just very, very. It looks like everything is in great turmoil. So, how can you think there's pleasure there? But Prabhupada is giving us an understanding of this by comparing it with the living entities within the ocean. In fact, Srila Prabhupada has given examples like this, that there may be a great hurricane, great cyclone, and for living entities who are above water, it's very dangerous. It's dangerous for birds, it's dangerous for ships, human beings, whatever, that are above the water. But for living entities who have taken shelter of the ocean, it doesn't affect them. It doesn't affect them because they are within the ocean and they can still enjoy pleasure as if there is no disturbance to them. And so Srila Prabhupada is making that comparison here and saying why if living entities can enjoy eating, sleeping, mating, defending within the ocean, why is it that the Supreme Lord cannot enjoy such pleasure? Now, this can only be understood if people have little broader intelligence to understand that actually those living entities also enjoy pleasure. Right now, most people think that there is actually, before I came to Krishna consciousness also, until Srila Prabhupada tells us that there is no difference between the happiness that you experience in sex and that a dog experiences in sex or any other animal experience in sex. You just never think about it. You never think that the happiness is equal. You may have some understanding that maybe there is some happiness. Actually, I never thought about it at all. I'm just being frank about that. So when when Srila Prabhupada presents these things to us, we get, oh wow, that's actually possible, that's actually true. Now, when you make these arguments to scientists or people, if you think, oh, we were speaking with one. We were just at Salt Lake City, or Spanish Fork, Utah, and one visitor was speaking with Vaibhavi Mataji, and she was explaining, looking at a painting. This is Krishna. He's God. He has a peacock feather. He plays a flute. He has a flute. He plays on a flute. And the person asked, well, why flute? So then she had a quick reply. She said, why not? And he was like, yeah, okay. He just kind of accept. It was a quick reply. He said, why not? And I was like, why not? And so, for simple people, that's good enough an explanation. Why not? Why not? Why if we can choose and have it? And then she explained, well, the flute is the most sublime of all instruments, and therefore Krishna has it. The flute is the most sublime, and therefore God plays the best of instruments, and the best of instruments is flute, and Krishna plays the flute. So then he was like, okay. But the way she responded, kind of, what I felt was that it kind of threw him out of his concept, because we are used to looking at things from our limited perspective. It's like, I don't play on a flute. Why flute? I never thought of playing, but we are not the center of the universe. And this is the problem of the scientists or scientific people, because you go and tell them this explanation. Srila Prabhupada would give similar examples, right? He would say, there are living entities that live in the sun. But how is it possible that living entities live in the sun? The sun planet, there are living entities there. Well, if there are creatures that can live within fire, which scientists have also analyzed, there are bacteria within fire. They thought fire can sterilize, but actually fire is not a perfect sterilizing agent, because there are bacteria that can survive within fire, within a flame. So, if there are bacteria, living entities that can survive within fire, why can't there be living entities within the sun? Now, if you go to people who are scientific, they will say, well, this is not scientific explanation. They won't accept this. They won't accept this as a valid form of thinking. But why not? Why can it not be? Why do they refuse to accept this? So, in fact, so I wanted to read something from a book that I'm reading currently. And this is written by a non-devotee. And she makes an argument over here, talking about attacking the myth that you cannot farm anymore. But I like the way she wrote, or he or she, it's both of them, Sean and Beth. So they say, the myth says you cannot farm anymore. It's an interesting myth, as myths go, because it is one that is brand new with the present age. It has never been told before, could have never been told, because until this very moment in time, it would have been preposterous. People would have had simply to look around them to see that it was not true. Man's existence had depended on the small farm for thousands of years. Thousands of years. And then she says, unlike other classic myths, and they're being sarcastic here, that of the great flood, or the God King, or the virgin birth, all of which persist in practically every culture in one form or another, myths about discrete events in a long ago past, this myth is about now. So this logic, I like the way she wrote this, because she's saying the great flood is a great flood, referring to Noah's Ark and this biblical story. It's true, you do find it in multiple traditions across the world, completely disconnected. We have it in the Bhagavatam also, Matsya Avatar. You have this. Now, what she's saying is, if there's completely disconnected cultures and the story is present, why wouldn't you think that there is some fact to it? We may not be able to conceive of it. And she's attacking this notion of myth, because this is a problem, because people, they ascribe myth to something and they get stuck in this box of thinking. And who declares these things? The glorious scientists. They give us this understanding. Now, for somebody with simple intelligence, simple person. He says this, multiple traditions are there. They're all speaking of this. They're all disconnected. How would you explain this? But the scientist says, this is not a scientific argument. This is not a scientific argument because you can't prove it. And Prabhupada would attack this. He said, well, can you prove that man is mortal? Can you prove that man is mortal? Everybody accepts man is mortal. But if you were to go by the scientific process, you would have to go and analyze every single person who's living on the planet and see, maybe there's someone out there who's immortal. How would you know? Every human being is mortal. How would you be able to find out? You cannot say for sure. So, how does this ridiculous argument actually fly in modern society? How did we come to accept this sort of thinking, which is actually, it flies in the face of logic? Because we accept man is mortal. Every human being is mortal. But we can't go and experiment this. So how do we accept these arguments of the scientists when they say, no, there's no life anywhere else, it's not possible, or these, they just declare these things, like what's stated in the Bhagavatam over here of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu lying on the ocean of devastating, of the water of devastation. This is all myth. What's this God who's lying on a snake? It's all myth. So how did we come to accept these things? It's interesting. Again, she writes about, or he, she, whatever. It says that because all you had to do was look around them to see it was true. So now we'll get into the other part of the problem. This myth says the land will no longer yield food to the laborer. And our modern experience, as far as it goes, confirms this. No one we know farms. At most, a few people keep pots of chemically boosted tomatoes on the patio. Food, our experience tells us, grows in factories or is mined with tractors as big as mech mansions, or extruded in polystyrene packaging from machines the size of football fields. We of the modern age, surrounded by stores filled with food that appears never to have grown anywhere, cut off from even a single unadulterated contact with this earth that teems with plant and animal life, in intimate, balanced, resonant relationship, experiencing reality only in its most limited and man-made forms. We accept the myth because nothing in our experience contradicts it. Nothing in our experience contradicts it. We literally think that milk comes from a milk carton, or that, and so, well, I'm reading further. She says, we have seen, so no, not this one. None of our friends have ever milked a cow. Many have never seen a cow, not up close enough to be sure that it really was a cow. Food doesn't come from farms anymore. Food, as long as it's in the stores, whenever we go hunting and gathering, is a fact of life, like air or television, a thing to be accepted, not questioned. The cute little farm with dairy cows and red barns is a thing of the past. Or is it? Now, why did I read that? Because the fact that we even have come to accept or grow up to accept, speaking for myself, when I first read or would hear Prabhupada's arguments like this, I would think this is not scientific. It's not. How would this fly? And this objection would come in our minds. This is good for devotees, but we can't present this for non-devotees. But the reason we also think like this is because we've raised in this kind of environment where you are raised in a society where everything is curated. What is the miracle? What is the miracle in our lives? The miracle in our life is I can scroll here and that moves. That's miracle. These are the miracles we see. So who becomes our God? The scientists. Because they're producing these things. And they've curated the entire civilization to fit this notion, because we're surrounded by man-made stuff. It's amazing. I can, if there's a live football match happening in, I don't know, wherever, Kansas City, I can see it right now. I can see it live. This is a miracle of modern science. Miracle of modern science. I'm flying in the air. This is all we see. So what do we miss out on? What do we miss? We miss out on seeing miracles in nature. Therefore, this is also fundamental statistics. You will find, wherever you go in the world, that there are more people who believe in the existence of God or creator or some form of controller in rural areas than urban areas. The reasoning, what's the reasoning? What is the common reasoning that people offer for this difference? Huh? Who's more advanced? Those in the city. By what way are they advanced? Technology, yeah. There's one more reason what they say, which is the predominant reasoning or education. They say the reason is the rural people are not very educated. Therefore they believe. But if you become more educated, then you see the people in the city are more educated. Now, first off, what they call education, it doesn't mean that rural people are illiterate. It's not like you look at rural America. It's not that most rural people are illiterate. They're educated enough to be able to read, to do math, to do their things. But yes, they don't have college degrees. So they say, well, you see, people with college degrees, they're more likely to, people without college degrees are more likely to believe in such myths. And people with college degrees don't believe in such myths. Well, there's another reason to that. Because people with college degrees have got big debt. And therefore they need to get the jobs and they need to live in the city. And once they live in the city, your whole experience is curated to believe what the scientists say. It's just, you live in this box where, we lived in New York City. It's hard. Everything is man-made. It's such a concrete jungle. But even without New York City, just living here as a city, you don't get to see the beauty of planting a seed, it growing into a plant, and then maybe a tree, and then giving some fruits, and you getting to harvest those fruits, and then actually taste how nice it is. You don't get to see that. You don't. Even me coming in Krishna consciousness, after I never got to eat something directly from a farm until I came to Krishna consciousness. When I came to Krishna consciousness, devotees would say, farm life is nice and this and that. When I actually went to a farm, it was the first time when I tasted like a squash. I don't like squash generally. And the squash was so tasty. It was unbelievable. It had a completely different flavor to it compared to what I would buy at the store. And when you experience these kind of things in nature, then it's not very difficult to understand this kind of logic. Because as Prabhupada would say, if Krishna can put an entire banyan tree within this tiny banyan seed, why is it not possible for Krishna to say, lie on a bed of snakes in the middle of the water of devastation and feel pleasure from it? Well, the reason we don't accept these things is actually because of how disconnected we have become from nature. And this is a nice talk by Srila Prabhupada where he refers to the story of the Brahman and the cobbler. So Prabhupada is saying that so Narada Muni, he used to visit Narayana every day. So while passing on the road, one very learned Brahmana, taking thrice bath and everything very nicely, he asked Narada Muni, "Oh, so you're going to the Lord. Will you inquire when I shall get my salvation?" "All right, I shall ask." And then another cobbler, he was under the tree sewing the shoes, old shoes. And he also saw Narada Muni. He also inquired, "Will you kindly inquire from God when my salvation is?" Now, when he inquired, Krishna, Narayana, Narada Muni generally goes to Narayana in another planet. So, yes, one Brahmana and one cobbler, they inquired like this. "So, may I know what is their destination?" So, Narayana said, "Well, yes, the cobbler, after giving up this body, he's coming here in Vaikuntha. And what about that Brahmana? Oh, he has to remain there for so many births. Or I do not know when he's coming." So Narada Muni was astonished that I saw that he is a very nice Brahmana and he is a cobbler. Why is that? So he inquired that I cannot understand this mystery. Why do you say this cobbler is coming after this body and why not the Brahmana? "Oh, that you will understand. If they inquire what Krishna or Narayana was doing in his abode, you just explain that he was taking one elephant from the holes of what is it called? The devotee, the eye of a needle. Prabhupada, the eye of a needle, yes. Through the hole of a needle, he is pulling an elephant this side and this side. Alright, so when he again approached the Brahmana said, oh, you have seen the Lord? Yes. What is the Lord doing? He was doing this through the point of a needle. He was pushing one elephant this way and that way. So therefore, I have got no faith. I have got all respect for your garb, but we don't believe all this nonsense. Then Narada could understand, oh, this man has no faith. He simply reads book, that's all. And when he went to the cobbler, he asked, oh, what have you seen? What is Narayana doing? He said that he was doing like this. Oh, he began to cry. Oh, my Lord is wonderful. He can do anything. So Narada inquired, so you believe that the Lord can push one elephant through the holes of a needle? Oh, why not? I must believe. Then what is your reason? Oh, my reason. I am sitting under this banyan tree and so many fruits are falling daily. And in each fruit there are thousands of seeds, and each seed there is a tree. If in a small seed there can be a big tree like that, it is very possible to accept that Krishna is putting one elephant through the holes of a needle. He has kept such a nice tree in the seed. So this is called belief. Unbelievers and believers. Believer means the believers. They are not blind believers. They have reason. So this is our reasoning. Now this is not accepted by the scientific community. They don't accept this kind of reasoning. Why don't they accept it? Because they have put themselves in this box of existence that they've created for themselves. And they explain, okay, so how does plant make food? So if they say, for a farmer, actually this is interesting also. I was reading Transcendental Diary, and Srila Prabhupada was explaining what to teach to the Gurukul students, to this Mataji. And the Mataji was inquiring, can I teach them biology? Can I teach them, how plants do photosynthesis and explain? Prabhupada said, why do you need to teach that? Why do you need to teach this? Don't teach all this stuff. Only teach what's required. Don't teach all this. Let them read Bhagavatam, let them learn to do something practical. What is the use of all this biology? This is very interesting, because a farmer knows that grass is maintained by the sun, or everybody is maintained by the sun. If the sun is not there, then we all won't survive. But a farmer knows enough to understand if the grass is green, or is the grass doing well, is it consumable by the cow, or things like this. This is all that he needs to know. Now, these scientists, they like to explain, how does the grass is there, and the leaves are green, and then there's photosynthesis, and then it generates, what? What does it generate? Generate something. Anyways, I can't remember. And then that's processed, and then the plant grows or whatever. Now, by understanding all this process, what happens is, because they don't explain the existence of God. They don't give any. It looks like they know what they're talking about, but Prabhupada said, what is the use of them knowing? He said, we know what the sun is made of. The sun is made of all this gas, and what's happening in the sun? How is the sunlight coming? How is the sun producing light? Anybody remember what you learned in school? Fusion. It's produced by nuclear fusion. So we know, the atoms, when they fuse with each other, and then the energy is released, and there's nuclear fusion. And Prabhupada, okay, so because of that, you're saying that there's no living entities in the sun? What kind of rascal you are? Why do you say that? Prabhupada says, you know how the sun is, why can't you make one sun? Why? Actually, there's an argument, life comes from life. Prabhupada says, why can't you produce sun? Why is it that Iceland, Greenland, everybody is living under snow? Why can't you produce one sun there and relieve them of the cold? Because you can't do that. You may understand all the processes and this and that, but what happens is, too much knowledge actually ruins a person's ability. When they acquire this knowledge without receiving it from the proper source, what happens is they ultimately become speculators. It's just like this Brahmana. Prabhupada says, Narada Muni, he's just reading books. There's no faith. We don't accept all this kind of, because too much knowledge. Too much knowledge without receiving it from a proper source. Without going through the process of acquiring knowledge, which means that you have to approach a spiritual master, you have to surrender unto him, you have to develop qualities. Knowledge doesn't mean, Vidya vinaya sampane brahmane gavi hastini suni chaiva swapakecha pandita samadarshinaha. That a pandit, when he is learned, he sees that you have the dog eater, the cow, etc. They are all same. The Brahmana, they're all equal. Why? Because the spiritual spark situated in these living entities are of the same nature. And therefore, when one acquires knowledge, one has to acquire qualities along with that knowledge. And one of the foremost qualities of one who is in knowledge is humility. If he is not humble, but what happens generally when people acquire too much knowledge, they become puffed up. So the scientists, they understand all these processes, but they became puffed up to not even recognize the existence of the Supreme Lord. So much so that they think with this is a miracle, they want us to accept this as a miracle, but not the fact that the grass can capture solar energy, and then the cow eats that, and that solar energy is transformed into milk in the body of a cow, which becomes nutritious, and in this way we get our nutrition that we cannot directly receive from the sun. We get our B12 by consuming milk products, which is required for our sustenance. But now they stripped all of this, and now when you want your B12, you get your supplement. Because they've created this entire artificial civilization where they themselves are the providers of everything. Even farming is like this. This book talks a lot about that. The whole farming industry is completely detached from the way nature works. And because we are living in this artificial world that they've created, they've more or less pushed the notion of God out of our lives. The notion of Krishna or anything like this, or appreciation. They don't accept these kind of arguments. They think the uneducated people say this. So one of the, we were attending a recent conference. One of the speakers was saying, if you want to understand if something is consumable or not, you see if the worms will eat it. If the worms don't eat your gummies and your nachos and all this kind of stuff, why do you want to eat it? And they did an experiment. It was talking about an experiment about how some school children, they had 2 beds of dirt with worms in it. In one bed they threw like apples, bananas, and vegetables and stuff like this, cooked food. And the other, they put, all this kind of manufactured stuff. They come back 1 week later, this is all fully decomposed, and that's as it is. Stays as it is. There's all kinds of videos out there. You can see this McDonald's fries just staying there for I don't know how long, years. And we eat this. We eat this stuff. The worms won't eat it. The fungi won't touch it. This decomposing stuff, they won't touch it. And we eat this stuff. And now, if you explain this to the scientists, they don't like this kind of experiment. They don't accept this kind of process. Because they can't recognize. It's just stupid. They're big rascals. That's all. Because they've become so puffed up. This Brahmana, he's read all the Shastra, everything. And therefore, Ishopanishad also says, Anya devahu vidyaya, nyadahur avidyaya, iti shushruma dhiranam, yenastad vichachakshire. That there is one result that is derived from gaining vidya, knowledge. Another result is obtained by gaining nescience, or understanding about the material world and nescience. And then it says, right after that, the verse is very interesting. It says, Andam tamah pravishanti ye vidyam upasate tato bhuya ivate tavo ya u vidyayam rataha. That andam tamah pravishanti ye vidyam upasate. So those who study simply nescience, those who only study the nature of this material world, they enter into the darkest regions of ignorance. Why? Because they're only studying the nature of this material world without connection with the supreme source of this, the spiritual source of all creation, the supreme absolute truth, Krishna, God. They don't have any understanding. They just understand nescience. They just understand the nature of this material world, or try to understand like this, and they enter the dark. But then it makes another amazing statement that Tato bhuya ivate tamo ya u vidyayam rataha. And the so-called followers of who are so-called knowledgeable, they actually are worse off than those who are studying nescience. That, in one sense, those who are ignorant, they are foolish. They're foolish people. They don't understand what is good, what is bad. They don't understand what should be done, what should not be done. They have no understanding of anything. So they're foolish people. But the so-called intelligent person, like the scientists, they are worse off because at least the foolish person, he is doing it because of ignorance. This fellow, he doesn't accept that he's ignorant. He thinks he's very knowledgeable, and you can never explain things to him. For someone who's simple-hearted, he may be ignorant, he may not understand that, just like this person was asking, why is God playing a flute? And Mataji replied, why not? He said, why not? See, he was ignorant. He didn't know that God could play a flute. But after receiving knowledge, he's better off. But you have somebody who's so-called knowledgeable, he won't accept it. I said, no. Why? I don't think this is, what is this? The myth, superstition, imagination, all this kind of stuff. So that's why they are compared to frogs in a well, who cannot imagine the length and breadth of the great Pacific Ocean. And these frogs, they like to create an environment that is suitable for them to continue their speculative processes. And those who live in that environment become subject or influenced to their ideas. This is why we are influenced by the ideas of scientists. I was thinking, why do I even when I read this purport, I was like, oh, that's not going to fly with the scientists. And then I was thinking, why am I always thinking in this way? Why can't what caused me to not appreciate these simple things? And why have I become so complicated in my thinking? It's because we're used to this. Just like you go to the store, in the US especially, the supermarkets, they don't sell bananas with spots on them. But bananas with spots are what you're supposed to consume because they're ripe. Bananas without spots are unripe. They're bad for your digestive system. They're bad for your gut because they are actually unripe. But because we like emojis where the banana is nice, or we like to play, what is that? Fruit Pop on the video game. Fruit Ninja, whatever. I've never played that, but I've seen everybody on the flight just playing. Pop, pop, pop. And this thing, the Fruit Ninja, this thing looks nice, and the mango looks beautiful, and so we expect this in the store. It's like it's literally we expect it to, just like every iPhone is produced in the same way. We think every banana must look the same. But if you actually live in nature, you know that even if you have one peach tree, one peach to another peach is different if it's organically grown. But then they have this genetically modified stuff where they have to grow that pomegranate or peach or whatever to fit the size of the carton. And they need to be able to fit so many in a particular carton. So it has to be modified to be able to fit this. And in this way, they have completely taken out Krishna or God's natural process. And by this, they have bewildered and fooled us all into actually thinking in this way. And this whole education system, it's amazing how they've created this whole environment. It's a very fragile system, that's for sure. That's another topic. But the point is, this is the reason why people think like this. They can't appreciate such simple arguments. Otherwise, these arguments are common. A simple man will accept. What's the problem? If the animals in the ocean, the fish, they can enjoy life within the water, why can't the Supreme Lord enjoy that? This is fine, perfectly fine argument. Or you can say, Noah's Ark story is found in different traditions, there must be some truth in it. Therefore, actually what the Bhagavatam is saying is true. The Matsya Avatar story is true. Well, it's very easy to understand. But we're complicated because we are used to it. And this we are bewildered by this miracle. Which is why Srila Prabhupada's other 50%, which is to establish farm communities, is to get us away from this. Because we as devotees also, when we get away, we actually start appreciating what's out there. When we start appreciating Krishna's creation, living in the lap of Mother Nature, which is consort of Krishna, then we can appreciate these kind of statements. And we can think, yes, it's possible. It's possible. Just see how that fish is enjoying in the water. Like that, Matsya Avatar, the Supreme Lord, how must he have enjoyed? And in this way we can connect. When we look at this iPhone, we don't remember Krishna. We just don't. We have to make it in some way. Somehow it's possible, but it's more disconnected. Whereas Krishna's creation is his own creation. And this is a byproduct. And the people who created it didn't create it with the idea of making us remember Krishna. They created it with the idea of making us forget Krishna, if at all anything. So, anyways, there's some thoughts. I'll stop here. If there are any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. Yes, Prabhu.
I thought of an example. Is this on? I can't tell. Sorry, what do I do? Here you go. So I have an example, and it's not an example directly relating with the verse or purport, but at least it's relating to something you mentioned in class. And it's a bit of a gross example, so I feel a little embarrassed using it here, but it's amusing enough. I can't help but include it, despite it being gross. So there was a study showing a correlation between the habit of masturbation and how many years one spent in education, and into higher education and so on. And there's a very clear correlation.
Krishna.
And so, but the funny thing, the amusing thing especially, is then you see the analyses people had over this. And so one person gave this analysis that this makes sense because, such a habit. Well, first of all, the further you go in education, that means the more education, that means the more intelligent you are. Uh-huh. And therefore, the more intellectually sophisticated you are, the more cerebral you are. And therefore, it would result in this, because such a habit requires intellectual sophistication. It's a cerebral exercise. And so that makes sense. That makes sense. That the further you go, it means the more cerebral you are. Therefore, the more likely you would be to, and completely, missing the alternative explanation that for each year you are in like the public education system or the higher education system, for each moment you're there, your any moral values and any adherence to religious standards is eroded, and so it makes sense that the longer you're in the education system, the more likely you are to engage in such a habit, because the more likely it is that you've given up religious standards or religiosity at all, and you've just embraced vices as being a natural part of biology and so on. So, but some people didn't see that at all as an explanation. They saw a clear correlation between intellectual sophistication and such an illicit sex habit.
Because they have blind faith in their system. That it must be, and it's difficult for us. I remember looking at the Gurukul boys. Initially, I was saying, they're not getting educated. They're not getting educated enough. Look, they're growing up like, illiterate. They're not illiterate at all. But I have become conditioned with these glasses to think that they're illiterate because they're not learning whatever biology or physics or chemistry and this and that, and because of that they're illiterate. They know how to read, they know how to do math, they know enough to live their lives, but they're illiterate. According to me, they're illiterate. It's like some big, big crime that they're not qualified to go into university or whatever. This unquestionable, it's amazing how much of unquestionable faith these people have in their own system, and how they've also gotten us to accept it. I mean, how else? We grew through the system. So part of at least my devotional life is trying to unwind a lot of this mess up that they've done within my own head, and how much it actually affects our own devotional life, the way we interact, the way we read Bhagavatam and things like that. So it's amazing, this example, to see how that they just, even even though something is so apparent, they'll explain it another way. It's like the Mayavadis. Something is very straightforward in Prabhupada's books. It's clear that Krishna has a form. You read Ishopanishad, Tatte Rupam, Kalyanata, Rupam, form. You read the Shankarites, they also love the Ishopanishad and completely twist it. because they have firm belief that God is formless. So just like this, the scientists, they have firm belief their education system is absolutely perfect. And anyways, Hare Krishna.
Their education system is so perfect that if this is the result, that result must be good, actually. You know, because you can't question the system.
See,
Yeah.
it's Krishna. Yeah. Anything else? Yes.
Prabhu, why do you think it's hard for our devotees to get a higher taste for simple living and high thinking? It seems like, rather live an artificial life in the city versus a natural, happy life.
See,
Is it like because the option isn't available?
well, that's one reason. But mostly it's because we are too much influenced by the modes of passion and ignorance. And this urban life really, really fosters that, fosters, the growth or degradation into the modes of passion and ignorance. And we don't when you go out and live a simple life, you do need to calm yourself down. You need to be willing to accept things that are going to run on nature's clock. And that's something we're just not used to. We are so used to having things like this, like this, like this. We think, even when people get a little fascination for gardening or something, they think, I should put the plant there, and you have to pour a little water on it, and maybe check some temperature, that, and then it should grow and it should yield the fruit. But then when things happen that they can't relate to, or it gets attacked by pests or this and that, they get frustrated and they come to the conclusion it's not possible anymore. And then they leave. So we're so used to doing that. We're so used to, what is that? Putting money into a vending machine and, getting a can of Coke. This is what we are used to. And this is the problem, that we've grown up with this, and it's just very hard for devotees to accept that. Actually, when Mahotsav Prabhu went up to Bhakti Vikas Maharaj and said, Maharaj, we're very excited, and we're very, fired up. We're very fired up about the farm. Maharaj said, it's one thing to be fired up, but actually the farm requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of patience. Because it's not, you start a farm. It's not suddenly you're going to grow all this waste. Suddenly, Prabhupada said, millions will come. Millions are not going to come to the farm tomorrow when you start. We're not used to that. And we're used to this environment. We're used to this life where things quick. It's a complete reset of consciousness. And that reset of consciousness is just not easy for most people to come. There's an entire hilarious section over here at the beginning of the book as to how this myth came about. And what is the experience? Because there's so many people who've tried to go and live on the land and then come back to the city, and now they're heavy advocates that, hey, you can't grow food anymore. This is not practical. And, they're on a whole campaign of trying to get people to forget about this. And they talk about this. It's a very interesting story of what kind of disappointments a person faces. And so it requires a reset in expectations, and most of us are just not willing to do that. This is after we chant Hare Krishna so much, we read all these books so much and this and that, but we still, we want farm life to be like that picture back there. Krishna Balaram is running with the cow. I think I'm also going to run in those fields and this and that. Hardly do I recognize the fact that, there's also, Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, Matara Sparshasta Kaunteya, that I don't like that. I have to tolerate the heat and cold and this and that. And so then we end up bringing the city. So that's the problem. We've been very indoctrinated into this system. This is my perspective. There might be other perspectives on that, reasons. Anything else? Any other questions or comments? Yes?
I had one quick question about kind of the cobbler and brahmana example, but I guess I was kind of thinking about, it seemed to me like the distinction there is, so like you might have like an ignorant kind of person somewhat, but they have like humility, whereas like yeah, I guess I was kind of, I don't know if this is correct, but this was kind of the distinction I was thinking of, whether there's humility or not humility. But and like, I guess I've seen like in college and since then, like there's kind of like you can't really avoid this kind of disciple and master kind of situation or dynamic. And I was thinking about, I guess my question was kind of, is it the case that that humility is something that kind of comes from like the master or whoever you kind of select as like a research advisor or like this kind of a professor or something that you approach? Would it be an accurate thing to say that a master, if he has humility, the disciple kind of will receive like that quality as well? Or I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
You can't say will. It's likely. But you can't say will because the living entity has free will to choose. A good example in this regard is Madhavendra Puri and his disciples. So Madhavendra Puri had two examples that are given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. You have Madhavendra Puri is the guru. He has disciple Ishwara Puri, who is the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya. Madhavendra Puri also had another disciple named Ramachandra Puri. And Ramachandra Puri was puffed up enough to instruct his spiritual master on Vedanta, or specific more like Mayavad Vedanta. At the time when Madhavendra Puri, in the last stages of his life, was lamenting out of separation from Krishna. And the example is given that Ramachandra Puri, even though he was very educated in this and that, he was puffed up. He was so puffed up that he dared to instruct his spiritual master. Now, his spiritual master is the epitome of humility, Madhavendra Puri. And his disciple Ishwara Puri imbibed that and served his spiritual master in his last days by helping him in his old age, cleaning up after him and this kind of things and cooking for him and all that. So, but Ramachandra Puri didn't get that. So, generally, it requires active endeavor for someone to recognize that they need to cultivate humility. They need to cultivate that. Otherwise, you gain all this knowledge and you just become puffed up that you know everything. Actually, one who is truly in knowledge will actually understand that he doesn't understand anything, doesn't actually know anything, and in that sense, he can actually become humble. But real humility will only come when one understands one's fallen position. This is the source of humility, is to understand one's fallen position, that one actually is very fallen. One doesn't actually understand anything, and one is completely dependent on the mercy of the Supreme Lord. But one who is not come to that perfection or realization of gaining knowledge, you gain all this knowledge. The scientists also gain all this knowledge. They know the planets, this, that, and all the orbits of the sun, moon, how they go around, and all the planets, and they don't think, wow, this is so amazing. How could have all this come by? But they're so puffed up, they say this all came by chance. They don't recognize that all this has come. There's no way this could happen by chance. Therefore, there must be an intelligent creator. They don't come to that conclusion because by gaining all the knowledge, rather than realizing their insignificance, they have become puffed up to think that they are very significant and their opinions and their ideas are very significant. That's the danger of knowledge. Which is why, even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Bahunam janmanamante jnanavamam prapadyate. That after many, many life births, the person seeking knowledge surrenders unto Krishna. Until that point, why does it take him many, many lifetimes? Because he's more likely to become puffed up and then speculate based on his lack of recognition of his insignificance. And because of that, it takes him lifetimes to come to actually come to that point. So no, it doesn't mean that if the teacher is humble, the student will also gain that. Not unless the student learns to recognize his insignificance and then respect the spiritual master or the teacher for teaching him that knowledge in spite of his disqualification. Then he becomes humble. Yes?
Yeah, I was gonna say it. What this made me think of is last time I went on books at Piedmont Park, I actually ran into family friends. I guess like they were like pretty close. Anyways, they saw me like Dodi Tilak. They saw all the devotees were like had our book set up, and then we were like, you guys had come. We were like doing Harinam. And they were like, whoa, like you look great, and like how have things been? I'm like, things are fine. And this family friend, like her boyfriend was there, and he was like, yeah, like actually I got these books like 2-3 years ago, and I was like, whoa, really? I'm like, he's like telling me how like, yeah, he's like, I read them, and I spent like all this time going, looking for like searching for like higher truth. And he's like, and I know exactly what you're doing, man, and trust me, like you're gonna realize the same thing I did, that Jesus Christ is the only way. I'm just like, God. Like, and I know it's amazing. It's like because you think that you went in search and ultimately you came back to the same conclusion. That's just all there is. It's like completely and totally like limited perspective. And it was like it was a real curveball. It's not like how. Anyways, like the interaction didn't at all like go like how like the whole thing was a curveball just to see them. And there was like a second curveball that he like said that I was just like completely shocked. But anyways, it's amazing how limited people's perspective is.
Yeah.
It's like because like your own experience, this is what you had. It's like you're so rooted in that you can't look beyond it.
Yeah.
And that's what it reminded me of. So there's also a point that I think Prabhupada had quoted. I think it was in Coming Back and in Science Self-Realization. There's a man who had gone to his space. And essentially, when he came back, he said that there's no God.
Yeah. The first man to go to space, Yuri Gagarin, I think, he said that. Russian astronaut who went into space. I went up there, I didn't see God, so there's no God. Janardhan Krishna has a comment. He says, one point on these Mayapur Gurukul boys, I've had friends that have come from the Mayapur Gurukul that come to them from Mayapur Gurukul that came to the West and study in school, and they're smarter and learn faster than the Western boys because their upbringing makes them so intelligent via practicing celibacy, a disciplined life, etc. That this quote-unquote difficult Western education, even for them, is very easy. Okay. Anything else from the men? Okay, Mataji's? Yes. She has something.
So I was reading about Lord Chaitanya's ecstatic symptoms, and one of the descriptions was about his humility that he was displaying in those pastimes. And so in the purport, Prabhupada is quoting from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where humility is explained and all these symptoms of humility are explained. And so when I was reading them, I was just wondering if it could be understood that for those who aren't on the platform of pure devotional service, pure love of God, and they're displaying what kind of maybe seems like some of these symptoms, is it just a perverted, can we understand it as these symptoms can be, that we may see manifest in others, are a perverted reflection of those pure symptoms?
You're asking if humility that is expressed by those who are non-devotees are perverted reflections of the real humility? To
some extent, exactly. Because it goes into so much description of what these symptoms are.
Yeah, yes. In fact, one of the ways actually, Prabhupada, you understand from Nectar of Devotion, is why Krishna has this life where Prabhupada explains this also. Why does he have this life where he's playing as a child and things like that? How can we understand that this is the supremest thing? Because we also like these things. We also, as a kid, like to play. We also, like to dilly-dally with the opposite sex. We also like to eat varieties of foodstuffs and children, and we like that kind of social life that Vrindavan has, and that perverted reflection is what we like. And so all these things that we see in the material world, therefore, for a devotee, it can remind him of Krishna and Krishna's actual existence, because everything in the material world is simply a perverted reflection of Krishna and his pastimes. So yes. Okay, all right. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Vanchakalpatrubhyascha kripa sindhubhyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo.